storms in the Atlantic. Actually, only 2 of them are ones we really need to be concerned about. Lee, not so much. Jose, I think, is still going to miss the U.S., but Maria is a factor now, and you're saying, well, when did that become a thing? Earlier today, a tropical depression, now a tropical storm, packing 50-mile-an-hour winds and moving steadily to the west and unfortunately headed for the eastern Caribbean. In fact, there are hurricane watches in effect for Barbuda and Antigua. Not good news. Expected to become a Category 2 hurricane by Tuesday, possibly Category 3, and impacting Puerto Rico by the middle of the week. I don't like the end of the forecast cone because that's pointed toward the U.S. That's the wrong direction after what we've been dealing with. As far as Jose, it's still out there with 80-mile-an-hour winds. As the Hurricane Hunter planes were flying in and around it today, they did identify some information that helped refine the track. Good news, because it looks like the track will continue to be away from the U.S. Earlier today, the cone of uncertainty was touching places like Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts, but now less so. Still going to see rip currents up and down the East Coast. We've seen that throughout the day today, but this is not a picture we want to see. Last time we had 13 named storms by this date on the calendar, Boris, was 2012. Remember what year that was? Sandy. We don't want to repeat.
Well, you hear us talk a lot about the models, the European versus the American, and how are they different? We're trying to model an atmosphere that has an infinite number of layers. From where we live to the top of the atmosphere, it's not 9, 12, 13 different layers. It's an infinite number, but you can't put infinity into a computer and expect an answer because it will just hang up and keep running. The difference between the 2 models is trying to get a model run that's accurate and timely. Timely meaning we can't have a perfect forecast for a 2-day snowstorm, but it might take 24 hours worth of running the computer to get there. So as a 2-day forecast that's only good for 1 day, is that worth it? No. We try to get it to run in 4 hours or less. Now the European model does take longer to run. There's more data in the European model, and so therefore it can be slightly more accurate. But the American model is pretty close.
Watch out.
You and your family need to be prepared for a hurricane way before it makes landfall. The number one thing you need to do, get your supplies. You need enough non-perishable food items for 3 days for each person in your family. You also need 1 gallon of water per day for each person. Also make sure you have plenty of batteries and a battery-operated radio, as well as flashlights. Chances are during a hurricane, you will lose power. In that case, your cell phone will lose power as well, so you'll lose all of your contacts. Make sure you make a list of all the emergency contacts that you'll need. Also, have an evacuation plan. Know your evacuation route and familiarize yourself with it. Lastly, get your home ready. If you have hurricane shutters, make sure you know where they are and you know how to install them. Also, prune your trees and gather up any loose items that can become projectiles. In the U.S., flash floods kill more people than tornadoes, hurricanes, or lightning. A flash flood creates a rush of moving water that can sweep a grown man off his feet, a car off the road, and even your entire home off its foundation. When the ground becomes so saturated that water can no longer seep into the soil, it begins to run off quickly into rivers and streams, and this causes a rise in water in a flash. Densely populated areas have an extremely high risk of flash flooding, with the additional concrete and less grassy areas for the water to soak into the soil, and they can see flash flooding very quickly. In mountainous terrain, the combination of gravity plus the easy runoff can lead to catastrophic flooding when all of that water is funneled into rivers, creeks, and even the valleys. Remember, flash flooding can happen in the blink of an eye. That's why it's important to stay alert and pay attention in case a flash flood watch or warning is issued for you.
We begin with Tropical Storm Maria that just formed in the busy tropics.
Storm Team meteorologist James Whelan tracking all of the activity. He joins us now with new information on this storm's track. James.
This is the busy time of year, the busiest. It is the peak of hurricane season here in September, and we have three named storms, Jose, Maria, and Lee out here. Let's get to Maria first. This is our brand new one that formed today. It was a tropical depression earlier and strengthened into a tropical storm. You can see some much better banding features on here, so getting much better organized as it approaches the island. Here's the forecast track, 50-mile-per-hour winds right now, but as it makes it towards the islands, it becomes a hurricane. Category 1 storm there with 90-mile-per-hour winds moving over. Not exactly the same area that Irma did, but pretty close, just a little bit south of Irma near Guadalupe instead of up to the north. Then we see it move towards Puerto Rico as a Category 3 major hurricane, 120-mile-per-hour winds, and right now the forecast track puts it very close to, if not on top of Puerto Rico. But again, remember, it could be anywhere in this cone. We don't really want to follow that straight line there. It could be anywhere in here, a little bit south or a little bit north. However, the danger is there that this will have some impacts on the Greater Antilles and the Lesser Antilles, and then after that it weakens a little bit of shear and a little bit of well, running into these mountains here on Hispaniola will make it weaken just a little bit. A lot of still warm water around here, so definitely something to keep an eye on. After this, you could see it start to curve to the north. Still too early to tell if it's going to come here in Florida, but early indications are it'll curve east of the Bahamas. But that doesn't mean let your guard down quite yet. We'll have to see, because this thing is still going to take about a week or so to be around. So tropical storm watches and warnings up for a lot of the islands here, most of the windward islands, and then up to the leeward islands too, seeing a hurricane warning as that approaches there. Now, Hurricane Jose, we still have that just off our coast here by about 600 miles. That one won't bother us directly, but going to get pretty close to the northeast. So if you have any travel plans up into New England, you could see some delays there. They'll get bad with wind and waves, even though the core of the storm is just offshore. It's going to expand into a very wide storm as it moves over the cooler waters there. And for us, we will see some effects, and that will be in the form of large swells. Those will start to arrive by late tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So rough go at it along the beaches and for boaters too.
Storms are spinning through the Atlantic, with one already a hurricane and another forecast to strengthen and threaten areas battered by Hurricane Irma last week. Tropical Storm Maria formed Saturday in the western Atlantic Ocean and is expected to be a hurricane by late Monday and a major hurricane by Wednesday, the National Hurricane Center says. By early Sunday, Maria was about 500 miles southeast of the Lesser Antilles, packing maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. The storm is moving toward the Caribbean at 16 miles per hour, according to the center. Peak core of Maria was expected to hit the Leeward Islands in 48 to 72 hours, and then move toward Puerto Rico in 4 days, then on toward eastern Hispaniola, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, in about 5 days, the NHC said. That means areas devastated by Irma could again be dealing with hurricane conditions by Tuesday or Wednesday. Hurricane watches have been issued for Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts, Nevis, and Montserrat, Guadeloupe, Saba, and St. Eustatius, St. Martin and Anguilla. Tropical storm watches are posted for Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Maria could also affect the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico by midweek as a dangerous major hurricane, and hurricane watches could be issued for these islands as early as Sunday. Interests in these areas should monitor the progress of Maria and follow any advice given by local officials, the NHC said. The center warned that rapid intensification was a distinct possibility, and it would be no surprise if Maria got significantly stronger than currently forecast. Hurricane Jose. Meanwhile, Hurricane Jose, a Category 1 storm, is spinning about 465 miles southeast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and 465 miles west-southwest of Bermuda. Jose currently has maximum sustained winds of 80 miles per hour and is expected to remain a hurricane through Monday night, the Hurricane Center said. Areas of the east coast of the United States from North Carolina to New England should monitor the storm's progress, it said, with tropical storm watches possible during the next day or two. While Jose is currently forecast to remain offshore of the U.S. coast from Virginia northward to New England, the large cyclone could cause some direct impacts to these areas, and any deviation to the left of the NHC forecast track would increase the likelihood and magnitude of those impacts, the Hurricane Center said. Swells generated by Jose were affecting Bermuda, the Bahamas, the northern coasts of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, and much of the U.S. East Coast, it said. Dangerous surf and rip currents are likely for the next several days. Tropical Storm Lee. There's also Tropical Storm Lee, which formed earlier Saturday in the eastern Atlantic Ocean. Lee is spinning about 760 miles southwest of Cape Verde off northwest Africa and packing maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. Lee is weakening and is expected to disappear completely within 5 days.